Welcome to the MUFON Central Region. This is our monthly presentation, and it is the first one that we're having officially as this group. And this evening, our presenter is Ryan Wood. Ryan was born in Maryland. He grew up in Southern California, where he first became exposed to UFOs when his father, Dr. Robert M. Wood, was engaged in deciphering the physics of UFOs while managing a research project on anti-gravity for McDonnell Douglas. This involved the process of trying to change the speed of light in a Michaelson Morely interferometer with high magnetic fields. In 1978, he graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo with degrees in mathematics and computer science and has had a long career in marketing, sales, engineering, and corporate management across semiconductor, computer systems, medical imaging, energy conservation, aerospace, and now in fusion as the CEO of Electric Fusion Systems, Inc. Ryan is regarded as a leading authority on the top secret classified Majestic 12 intelligence documents and the 1941 Cape Girardeau, Missouri UFO crash. Welcome, Ryan.
Well, thank you, Margie. It's great to be here again, and share with what I can share with your, 16 participants. Here we go. And feel free to save up your questions. I do want to sort of pause partway through and try to ask some questions or get some questions from the audience and try to make sure that I'm addressing their interests. And do that. This presentation is highly similar to the one that I gave at the July MUFON Symposium in Texas, but I'll try to keep it as fresh and interesting as I can. Let me share the screen here and see if everybody can sort of see that.
Yes, but it's not on full screen.
Yeah, I know that. If I go to full screen, there's this bar that, well, maybe I can hide some of this stuff. Okay. Hopefully this will work. Crash UFOs, MJ12, data analysis, implication, action plan. I mean, that's really, what I wanted to talk about. This is a classic cartoon. John Schuessler, our former leader-in-chief, was very fond of cartoons. And this one about crashed saucers and aliens wanting something other than water is some sort of humor for people. The agenda really that I have is the core issues of ufology, the AI ufologist, which I'll talk about, and what it does, and the majestic documents, and then official documents, and my book, Magic Eyes Only, talk a little bit about anti-gravity craft and our efforts there, and then my comments on disclosure and whether or not that's going to happen and conclusions. So that's the broad brush of what I was going to talk about today. So fundamentally, the core issues are credibility. There's not enough of it. There's too many charlatans about, and we need more credibility and more articles. Congressional testimonies are wonderful, and they help our credibility. Leadership, which is what MUFON tries to do all the time, and what many people in ufology do to try to do what they can do to move the ball down the court, from investigations to follow-up to spending their own money and time to make a difference and document the challenges and the details of ufology. And then finally, the elephant in the room is funding, money. That's the thing that's most missing from our success, is that we need to be spending $50 million a year on ufology. It takes $1 million just to protect one whistleblower. So it's grossly underfunded. Maybe there's a couple $1 million spent on everything in ufology. I'm excluding things like Ancient Aliens, which um, is, a TV program that's not completely on point. But anyway, so my effort at trying to improve the credibility is this book called UFOs Who Knows, which is uh, your ideal Christmas gift um, that you can get on Amazon right now. 180 different quotes from famous people, all about ufology. A picture, a bio, and the quotes from scientists, religions, engineers, presidents. There's 180 of them. So there's a lot of different vectors that people can relate to. Um, Lots of sports people, lots of celebrities. So this is what's in the book, and it's $20 on Amazon. It's so for the friend, the neighbor, the relative, the family member that's just coming into the field, this is a nice little um, orientation for them. And it's my effort to improve our credibility because there's so much in the way of uh, here's an example from Demi Lovato and her quote. We were stargazing and we tried to do this protocol where we made contact with the aliens, and all of a sudden something showed up directly above us in the sky. It's not that I'm actually like shaking hands with these beings, although I love that. I think these beings are extremely peaceful and loving. And when they showed up, I felt absolutely, supported the concept. Um, but she does have been maybe the tall Nordics or something like that versus the grays that might want something other than a positive relationship. But anyway, there's lots of different people, 185 total, government presidents. I mentioned them earlier. So another example of a quote is, who said this? Yes, there have been ET visitations, there have been crashed craft, there have been materials and bodies recovered. There's some group of people somewhere that may or may not be associated with the government at this point, but certainly were at one time and have this knowledge. Um, so you're thinking and you're saying to yourself, oh, I think I knew who that is. It's the famous astronaut. Ah, sure enough, it's Ed Mitchell who said that. He said a lot of other things. Um, and here's another one. We have the technology to take ET home. We know how to travel to the stars. There's an error in the equations. We figured it out. And I know how to travel to the stars, and won't take a lifetime to do it. And you're thinking, yeah, I think I know who this is. And it's Ben Rich, the former head of Lockheed Skunk Works for 15 years. And this is quotes from his retirement at UCLA. Even Jan Harzan, our former MUFON director, was right there talking to him and asking him questions. So that was interesting. Or J. Edgar Hoover must insist upon full access to discs recovered, for instance, in the LA case, maybe Los Angeles, Los Alamos, or Louisiana. The Army grabbed it. So this is, handwriting directly from the National Archives. More evidence. But this is just the flavor. Einstein gives a quote about, lastly, we should consider the possibility that our atmospheric atomic bomb tests of late could have influenced the arrival of celestial scrutiny. They could have been curious or even alarmed at such activity. Well, I think they would be. They've probably seen this movie 1,000 times before with emerging planets that detonate atomic bombs, and they know the trajectory of what's going to happen. And then finally, something that applies to the disclosure debate is, his quotation, if the alien races consider our culture devoid of political unity, well, naturally, we are devoid of political unity all across the world right now. They would have the right to colonize and move in. Of course, it's not a classical approach. They may take over Antarctica or go underground or underwater or do other things, but there's no unified government to sort of discuss and relate to and have diplomatic relations with. in a public way. And so my impression is that it's going to be much later when we solve all sorts of problems with our society and global society around environment and nukes and education and dot, dot, dot. And when we've solved that, then we can join, as Stanton Friedman used to say, the cosmic kindergarten. So anyway, the other thing is, leadership. That was sort of the credibility discussion. This is leadership, and leaders turn vision and ideas into action, and they're generally a pivotal force. You have a multiplier effect, so you need to multiply. You need to get your friends involved. You need to send out your own emails and leverage and multiply your efforts, amplify. And they're committed to the process of change, and you want to have some sort of vision and plan and execute. I mean, these are standard business stuff that for those people that have led teams and have been in business, this. You just need to apply it to ufology, and then ultimately your power comes from the relationships and the connections you build amongst your team members and your friends and your fellow MUFON members or other members. And leaders tend to do the right things while managers tend to do things right. That's sort of oversimplified, but your challenge is, how do you lead in ufology? Get on a podcast, go do something, make a difference, push on one of these buttons. First button that I'll talk about is UFODEX. UFODEX.com is available right now, where you can submit any question you want about the nature of ufology and access some nearly 500,000 pages of UFO data, and get a robust AI-enabled answer with references and so forth. So that's something that can be done. You can write a book. You can investigate crashes. You can, try to push on your politicians to make a difference. So there's lots of things that can be done. Of course, all this takes money, which is the sort of key thing at the end. This is how to outline and spend, $17 million worth of money. You can spend money on media. You can do exposés on purloined progress with whistleblowers and so forth. You can try to penetrate the secrecy of a variety of corporations that are reverse engineering and target their board of directors and try to get and make a difference there. You can file lawsuits. There's plenty of lawsuits that need to be filed around Freedom of Information Act requests. I mean, typical requests to the National Archives are seeing, 3-year, 6-year response rates for documents, just somebody's FBI file. And, if you want it faster than that because they're relevant to ufology, you got to sue them. And so, that's something that can be done. You can focus on foreign country disclosure. There's lots of people or lots of countries that I think could help this, but you often need to incentivize them. Political pressure, we talked about that. Whistleblowers. I mean, it's not just Grush. There's plenty other ones, but you got to protect them. You got to offer them basically a lifetime salary and security and legal help to support their defense against potential governmental attack. So these are real things that you have to do to try to make a difference. And I mentioned briefly UFODEX but also the AI ufologist, which is another book that I just recently wrote. But I started UFODEX back in 2005 when I started collecting all sorts of scanned books and OCRing them and building a huge database, because I thought back then that cracking the secrecy was the way to do it is through superior intelligence. And so I created this book called UFOs Who Knows, also on Amazon, $15. It's a very different book. It's, it answers the big questions of ufology. Why are they here? Why do they abduct humans? What's the agenda? Why can't they keep it secret? Or why are they keeping it secret? It goes through 30 questions, but this is how I've chosen to implement a useful tool to allow people to gain a better handle on the details of ufology, and with perfect recall. What made MUFON conferences fun is that you get to hear all these different perspectives. But when you can start hearing fundamental, you know, perfect recall memory, then from AI and a huge knowledge base, you can get more sophisticated and robust insights into the enigma of ufology. So that's really what I chose to focus on. And what impressed me most was the completeness of the answers. Hey, I asked, what's the ET agenda? And it came back with 14 paragraphs. And I looked at it and said, oh, I got like 8 or 9 paragraphs right. I didn't get the other ones. And I've been in the field for a long time. So that's the part that's magical about UFODEX. And I urge you all, I just finished processing over 100 requests today because I was on a big podcast on the Julian Doran show. It just dropped a couple days ago, or yesterday actually, and that was fun, a little tedious, but nevertheless, lots of people ask great questions, and I urge you all to just jump in. And then the data sources for this is this huge collection of all sorts of books and periodicals. Well, it's not 1,500 files; it's now 3,000 files of books, government documents, FOIA, CrashCon proceedings, all the MUFON proceedings, newspapers. It just keeps growing. But I'm calling the garbage in, garbage out problem and trying to sort that out, make sure that I would not get infected with a bunch of junk that's on the web that's not on point or relevant to our field. This is sort of technically how it's done, but I won't get into that. But it's a retrieval augmented database, or RAG database. It's much more than ChatGPT, or so it's a unique brain implant, so to speak, into AI that's just with ufological knowledge. And it keeps getting better all the time. So we're working on that. And as I mentioned earlier, the AI ufologist has a series of increasingly sophisticated questions. And I think I'll describe a few of them here. Just give you the first one, the table of contents. What is the agenda? Why would extraterrestrials abduct humans? That's leveraging all the work of many of the great researchers in ufology. Do extraterrestrials care about humans? Why haven't they made open contact? What are the governments hiding? How would confirmation of extraterrestrial life affect human society? These are the questions that many of you have thought about already, given the fact that you're involved in MUFON and are interested in it. National security. But what impressed me with this process is that you'll learn a lot of things that you either used to know or forgot or didn't think about. What's the role of private companies in space exploration? How can the public interest and government cover-up be reconciled? I mean, that's a good one. Why are they hiding the truth about extraterrestrial visitation and crashed UFOs? There's reasons they're doing this, and it goes on. I mean, this is the first 16, and there's a lot more. And here's an example of question number 1, which is the classic question. What's the agenda? It's scientific study. It's resource acquisition. Give me the water, the gold. Speculatively, or more importantly, like, give me the DNA. Give me the people. I want to try to influence the people. That's what I'm trying to do for. And there's benevolent intentions and benevolent guidance and indifference. Each one of these, single words is a paragraph or two that just that explains in a more robust fashion the details. Oh, they're trying to survive. My planet and star is dying, and I need to move to a new one. So we chose this one because it met all our criteria. This reminds me of a Star Trek episode. But diplomatic relationships that, some races say, well, we're trying to do diplomatic relationships, or the discussions of the alleged Eisenhower treaty or agreement. Um, just observation, somebody's getting a PhD in emerging kindergarten planets, and then we need to watch these people for the next 100, 200 years and see how they navigate their environmental disaster, the nukes, their geopolitical problems, uh, the, the emergence of crypto currency and financial situation, the emergence of artificial intelligence or gravity control. I mean, there's so many crazy things that are going to unfold in the next 10 years that it's a wild time to be alive on planet Earth. And then experimentation, let's take some spermanova. You've all heard this before, and do hybrid programs and things like that, genetic manipulation, and then, more along the lines of the Nordics and the tall whites and the Pleiadians, the salvation of the human species. Those are all sort of agenda items that definitely could come into play and were discussed in the AI ufologist in some detail. And then, the other one is why abduct humans. And you may have thought about this. This is not my expertise. I'm just sort of, I focus on documents and crashes and AI and gravity. That's sort of my space in ufology, where many other people are much more expert in the discussion of human interface and what happens. Neurological, psychological studies, monitoring of humans, cultural examination, spiritual and metaphysical reasons of why they want to interface. Testing of various technologies. There's healing experiment, preparation for future events. We've often heard people are shown visions of nuclear war or environmental disasters. Is that to scare us or to urge us to take care of our planet and focus on that? It's hard to tell. But anyway, that's sort of the big picture. And then, question 15 here is, what are the goals and functions of MJ12 in the AI ufologist? The number one thing is recovery operations. We got to grab the hardware and grab the bodies and grab the evidence before any other government or country or civilians get a hold of it. And then manage the communications, negotiate diplomatic relationships with the alien cultures and beings. I mean, these are all believable, credible, possible functions of the control group, MJ12, and then, of course, DNA mapping, possibly to improve our race directly. Can we get to the 200 IQ immortality range? Is the control group trying to get there first? And maybe they are. If I was in charge, I would be. You want this unfair advantage. Clone extraterrestrial craft for reconnaissance and go to the moon and Mars and try to gain an upper hand in ET technology and basically be able to survive off world in case our existing world um, fries or blows up for a variety of reasons. I know it's kind of negative, and naturally they want to keep track of any ET bases on planet Earth and their mission and purpose, multiple missions from different organizations. So they're surely tracking potential bases in Alaska or Antarctica or in Pine Gap, Australia, or in the Pyrenees, or a whole variety of alleged UFO ET bases underground or um, in special places. Uh, and then manage the integration of the alien element in world society is another, mission statement. How do we desensitize the human population so they don't freak out, because they discover that, oh no, Jesus really was an alien, or that we've got all this ET hardware, and no, you can't have it, and we have all sorts of biological weapons that are based on ET technology. So this is, the potential functions. I won't talk about how to formulate it. Well, maybe just a brief question. So when you're putting a question into the AI, try to be more verbose, ask longer, more complicated questions. Don't just say, what's the ET agenda? Say, well, give me the agendas for the multiple races of aliens visiting planet Earth, for example. What's the reptilian agenda, and contrast that with the gray agenda. Cite your sources and provide references to that. And you can do that. You can ask for sources and references too, and it'll come back with the books, the periodicals, the newspaper clippings, and the data that supports that particular response. And so that's a powerful tool. And you can also just email me directly if you want to, but I would urge you to go to ufodex.com and do that. With that, I guess I want to stop the share for a moment and have people raise their hands and ask any questions they might have at this point in the presentation before I go on.
Okay, if anybody has any questions, there's you can raise your hand or go ahead and take your mute off and just start talking. Anybody? Everybody is muted, I know that.
Come on, Debbie. You're sitting there, you know all this stuff. And
Oh,
let's
Larry has his hand up.
okay, Larry.
Hi, Ryan. I bought your book, Magic Eyes Only, and I was glad to see a photocopy of a majestic document that showed different types of craft in all the different. It's on page 466. Is of all the different documents that you've had access to, or that you uh, with all these references, is there anything that gives a more complete picture of what some of those shapes are, types of craft, than just that one that obviously was done probably back in the 40s or 50s?
Yeah, I think you're referring to the Special Operations Manual
Yeah.
page where there's a description of the various craft shapes done in 1954.
Okay.
You had the saucer, the triangle, the ice cream cone, the cigar shape, um, and what's surprising to me back then is the triangle shape, which I think a lot of the triangles today are maybe our craft, and maybe some of the saucers and so forth. But yeah, there are many other sources of literature around that, but that's, as far as shapes goes, um, that's the only one in my book. Any other questions?
I don't see any.
Okay. Well, Debbie gets a pass. Um, so I will continue sharing and keep going here. Um, so, well, I mean, uh, one of the first things people ask is, what is the majestic documents? What is that? And let me say it's some, 3,500 pages, um, spanning 18 years from, well, more than that, from 84 to 2001. So So it's, well, it's a long history from multiple sources with different classifications. Some of it is boring and some of it is, very interesting. Some is original onion skin paper and typing. Some of it is photocopies. So some of it was mailed as film and then developed and then analyzed. So that's the whole cross section of details is from the Majestic documents. And one of the Majestic documents is the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit, the IPU, and this is acknowledged from multiple, I think 4 different Freedom of Information Act requests, that the IPU is a real department, part of the Assistant Chief of Staff for Intelligence, Technical and Scientific Branch, Counterintelligence Group. And this document, which is on majesticdocuments.com and in my book, Magic Eyes Only, it provides details of the Roswell. It talks about autopsies done by Dietlif Bronk and Charles Ray. It talks about mutilated animals inside craft or body parts. And it says that Oppenheimer was at landing zone 2, where he saw and looked at the craft and crash, and his body's recovered. It's very detailed and militaristic. It starts off at 23:32 Mountain Standard Time, 2 craft dropped off radar from the stations in East Texas, and and it goes on. It's clearly written by a military officer of some sort. So as I mentioned, there's been admission that the IPU phenomenon exists, and that within the documents, there's sort of this suspicious and categorical denials of more records, so to speak, based on institutional memory and so forth. But this particular document, which is here, is signed by the Director of Counterintelligence. So this guy's job is to lie to you and advocate for the Department of Army and be focused on accomplishing the goals of the Army to discredit. This is 1980. It's clearly the mission then to not admit anything more than they have to. And one of the key sources of material that came in the Majestic documents is a pseudonym name of a guy by the name of Thomas Cantwheel that leaked or provided many of the documents to Tim Cooper, but not all in any way, shape, or form. So, and he was part of the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit. Here's an example from the White Hot Report, which is on Majestic documents. The following elements were analyzed and found to exist in a small neutronic power plant that was found inside ULAT-1, unidentified lenticular aerodyne technology. And I won't read this all to you, but basically there's 10 points of what they found inside this neutronic power plant inside the Roswell crash. And this is part of a 19-page report to Truman that was presented to him in September of 47. And that's when he signed the order to establish top secret research and development intelligence gathering organization called MJ12. So September 23rd, I think, 1947. So this is just one example of juicy details, these technical details that's in the on the Majestic Documents website. And then the Special Operations Manual, which is the most researched, most credible manual or Majestic document. And it's right there at the title: Extraterrestrial Entities, Technology, Recovery, and Disposal. So this is it's a field field manual for recovery teams. And it started in 54, and the last entry is in 1957. But it has descriptions of the EVs, where to send the crashed parts and the bodies, and how to cover it all up. Tell them it's a downed weather balloon. Tell them it's a biological leak or radiation leak, or tell them it's a fire or a meteorite or a downed satellite. You just lie constantly to make sure that you get everything before anybody can get there, and then package it all up and send it. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why it's real, and I've given long presentations about that. But fundamentally, I found the officers on the change control page in Kirkland Air Force Base that were responsible for managing this particular document. And this was, I believe, an Air Force document. And the other organizations, the Army or the Navy, may have had similar things or different manuals or approaches. There was a lot of fiefdoms back then, and not everybody shared all their juicy data with others. So that's sort of just the nature of the beast of military at the time. But there's a whole bunch of reasons why it's authentic. Entomology, for example, is one of the interesting ones, which is word usage. Screwdriver is 2 words in the document, and now it's 1 word. And first aid is properly capitalized back then, and now it's 1 word. So there's these subtleties that prove that it's a hot lead printing press back in the era, and that the language use is not some bright faker in 1994 when the document was leaked. And here's another one. This is an original document. Let me try to move this out of the way a little bit. The Encyclopedia of Flying Saucers. And this is on Amazon. This book that my father and I worked on together. It was originally written by Vernon Bowen. It's sort of Vernon Bowen was a copywriter in New York, advertisement, and he went to the New York Public Library a lot and was very interested in flying saucers, and did all sorts of research and found the most credible, interesting cases. So from 1960 backward. So it's an incredible, well-written history of the basically flying saucer incidents. So as a good citizen, he sent this into the Air Force, and they stamped it. The highest classification of this document is top secret magic, no foreign dissemination, for U.S. eyes only. No UK, nobody else, exempt from declassification. ERATA, Originating Agency Declassification Authority. So that's what, nobody's going to see this special handling required, not releasable to any foreign nationals at all. So about what it shows is it was leaked 40 years later. I mean, it went in 1960 and it came out in actually 1999, so 39 years later. And from the Freedom of Information Act office in original materials like this. And so and we did forensic testing of the paper and ink and pencil marks, concluding that, yeah, this is all sorts of old comments and markings that are authentic for the 60s and 70s based on the pencil and paper marks. And there's comments in the margin by Vannevar Bush and Don Menzel and somebody by the name of Ben, which we haven't figured it out. So there's lots of interesting, several undersea cases as well in there. But maybe, and I'll come to this later, there's another interesting part of that. There's also the Cutler Twining memo, which many people have heard of, top secret restricted, original manuscript, NSC, MJ12 Special Studies Project. And this is right in the National Archives in the Madison Building in downtown Washington, D.C. at the Library of Congress Manuscript Division. So this is thoroughly authentic. There's no debate. The debate is, what is MJ12 Special Studies Project? And so that's, but I have other documents, part of, DLIF Bronx FBI file has him assigned to the White House for Special Studies Project M, assuming for majestic. So yeah, here it is down at the bottom, Special Studies Project M. So that's interesting. And so he's on the Eisenhower briefing document, one of the first leaked majestic document that talks about majestic 12 and what the focus was. So actually, that was interesting. The previous slide says White House 1959. So even in 1959, there's a Special Studies Project M. So, I would say that I have high confidence that from 47 to 59, it was still called, Majestic 12. But there's other comments from other people that suggest much longer. Here's DLIF Bronx FBI file. Well, actually, this is a comment from the from the IPU document, Interplanetary Phenomena Unit, which talks about DLIF Bronx assist in the autopsy of one well-preserved cadaver to be done by Major Charles E. Ray of Medical Corps. From the descriptions the team was able to learn, and from the photographs taken by the G2 intelligence photographers, the occupants appear in most respects to be human, with some anatomical differences in the head, eyes, hands, and feet, of slight build, 5 feet tall, grayish pink skin. So I think they're describing a typical gray alien. But also, when you look at Bronx FBI file, he also has this Special Studies Project M on his file. So there's a couple people. And then here's another official document, Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency memo 1412 in April 49. Right there in the bottom corner, it says file description CIA top secret MJ12. And this is concerning, Project 63. I have no idea what that is, but nevertheless, the format, secrecy, etc., are all correct. I have loads of documents with the same format, the same notations. These numbers at the bottom are all in sequence. Up at the top, there's this comment ER, and that stands for Executive Registry. And when I filed for give me Executive Registry 2735. They said, oh, we can't find that. This is Hill and Coders, who was the first director of the CIA. So, if anybody really wants to look or has any push with the CIA, but they control everything, then you can make real progress. Go Congress, get your chutzpah up and engage. So now here's another interesting example, the Advanced Study Group. This is the Air Material Command at Wright Field in Ohio. And so, we had the crash of Roswell in 1947. And so all summer long at Wright Field, they had all these engineers and scientists trying to figure out what the hell just happened, what this crashed vehicle was, how do we get in it, what can we learn, etc. And here's this, directly out of the manuscript division at the Library of Congress, this Advanced Study Group note from the officer in charge, dear General Twining, thanks so much for coming by, and we loved all your support, and thank you for all your help during our 3-month-long effort in the summer. But what I'll tell you is that this file folder, when I got my hands on it, was like half an inch thick, and it was clearly had half an inch worth of paper in it, but all there was this single one page in that folder. So Somebody is drawing on this this document. That's weird. Um, anyway, Harry B. Cooper is another interesting person. He's the father of Tim Cooper, who Thomas Cantwell leaked a bunch of documents to. So that's noteworthy, and he gets this commendation. Harry B. Cooper, from Curtis LeMay about his outstanding work in the U.S. Air Force UFO program. Uh, he worked at Int Air Force Base and in a cage doing printing for all sorts of government documents, basically classified and unclassified. So it basically establishes time frame 57 to 63 that he was involved, and got this commendation from Curtis LeMay. So that I find, and here's the combination, whereas, the Foreign Technology Division of the National Photographic Interpretation Center, in their contribution to the USAF UFO program, his exemplary leadership as a non-commissioned officer in the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigations reflect great credit upon himself, the Air Defense Command, and the United States Air Force. So here you get a clue that, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations was up to their eyeballs in this stuff. And then we have also this document here, or this picture really, of the 1947 Air Force Scientific Advisory Board. These basically people were all clued in, or the majority were clued in, on MJ12 and reverse engineering and scientific analysis. And at the head here is von Karman, Theodor von Karman. And then Dietlif Bronk is to the left of him. And I can't recognize all these other people, but you can get their names. You can get their FBI files. You can find their children. You can interview their children. You can interview their grandchildren. So, that just blew away $400,000 or $500,000. This is why the whole field needs real money to go pursue this stuff. Now, here's another interesting one. Here's Office of Scientific Research and Development, OSRD, Oppenheimer. This is his top secret reports of just 4 pages from 47 to 52, which I got from the National Archives. This is inventory and receipt of his top secret documents. And it goes on, and I'm in the process of analyzing all these different dates and commentaries and people. And I know what was happening in ufology around this, and you can go to the National Archives and potentially get them to declassify, the minutes of, this is halfway down on 5/30/47, the minutes of the 4th meeting of the GAC, or other correspondence post Roswell. So it's clear that there's tremendous opportunities to do detailed research into this topic. And, so the evidence is out there. It just takes time, money, manpower, etc. And, a good 2-man team in the Library of Congress or National Archives is $8,000 a week. You got hotels, you got to pay them, you got to feed them, you got to strategize. So, I mean, you can't just do this willy-nilly. If you really want to succeed, you have to engage people in a very serious way. And then, we have David Grush with his whistleblower comments before Congress. You probably have all heard of this. And, his effort and, under oath confirms there's an active disinformation campaign. And actually, at the MUFON conference in July this last year, somebody came up to me and said, Ryan, a big burly guy, clearly, former military or existing military. He said the budget for disinformation is just as big as the budget for management of the project. And so you imagine how much thought and effort and conscientiousness can go into manipulating the media, the people, the evidence, and trying to ensure good control of the situation. The counterintelligence people are working hard to manage this problem. You know, he confirms non-human biological entities. I mean, you've watched this. If you haven't watched it, you need to watch it. And not only the 2023 ones, but the ones that just happened a month ago, 2024, which in my mind were interesting. And Michael Schellenberger gave a great presentation and had a lot of supporting documents, which are interesting. And so there's loads of evidence that's slowly drabbing out. And that's the, now here's something interesting. This came from the www.xcorp.com. If you scroll through this is the lady's office in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where on her wall, you got pictures of stealth fighters, but also you have this saucer sitting, what appears to be on legitimate, rail in a warehouse. And why would a military officer in their, let me go back here, in their office have this picture on the wall? Is it because, the contractors come in and say, we love the stealth fighter stuff, but, this is what I really want. I want this saucer here. And I just find it unrealistic to believe that this is not a genuine item. But at the same time, the intelligence guys would say, anybody that had a classified program picture on their wall would be in deep shit fast in their office. So there's that juxtaposition of, don't know what. Now, if you look at who's running Wright-Patterson Air Force Base today, there's basically 2 women that are in charge of that base. And there's crash retrieval conference proceedings that are available on Amazon from all the 7 years that I gave crash retrieval conferences in Las Vegas. Just like the MUFON journal proceedings are out there. And then naturally my book, Magic Eyes Only, it's got 104 crashes. The second edition is out now. This is, loads of detail about UFO crashes and their authenticity and why they're important and real. And I'm leveraging the work of Leonard Stringfield and the work of many other researchers that came before me and I've written books all about various crashes. So you can read the sort of short 1 to 10-page summary in my book, or you can buy somebody else's whole book that's nothing but all about Kecksburg and the Kecksburg crash or something like that. So anyway, that's my book. Cape Girardeau, which is why many of you are here, are probably most excited about this particular story. But this is a picture of Charlotte Mann, who's the granddaughter of Reverend Huffman, and she heard this story from her grandmother on her deathbed, Flo Huffman. So sometime in the spring, possibly the fall of 1941, we have this saucer that crashes, and Reverend Huffman was called from his house on Main Street in downtown Cape Girardeau. He was a Baptist minister there at the Red Chapel Church, I think, something like that, and offer blessings to 3 dead, allegedly identical or cloned aliens. And so that's a very, interesting. He was driven about 15 minutes out of town, and and naturally, with most crash retrievals, the military sweeps in and cleans it all up and swears everybody's secrecy. Allegedly, the fire department was there as well. Charlotte Mann, here's the details, the story from her grandmother, Flo Hoffman, in 1984. And she's been interviewed on video by many researchers, not just me. Very sweet woman, very authentic in every way, shape, or form. And so that's sort of the short story about Cape Girardeau. The story was continued on by Paul Blake Smith, who wrote the book Missouri 41, which has more details. I've been to the National Archives trying to pin down precisely where this happened by comparing aerial photography from 1939 and 1943. And I've been to a couple of fields with psychics and metal detectors trying to find the spot. I haven't succeeded. One of the key areas is a housing tract now, and the other is still an open field. You have a fairly bounded set of locations, because you got a 15-minute ride in a police car from a known location based on a 1941 roadmap. And so there's still room to do more investigations on this Cape Girardeau crash event. So, and then Rush Limbaugh, for example, he was asked on his show, Rush Limbaugh Jr. asked on his show, is there anything to this? Because he lived in Cape Girardeau, and his father was in Cape Girardeau and his father was a bigwig in Cape Girardeau, knew all the city council and mayor, and very much plugged into the whole. I think he was fairly wealthy businessman at the time. I really haven't investigated his full background, but somebody called into Rush Limbaugh Jr., conservative radio show, and asked, do you know anything about this Cape Girardeau UFO crash? And he sort of hemmed and hawed and said, there's a lot more to it than just dismissing it, and left it at that. He didn't want to go there. It might have been too much for his audience. So anyway, that was the Cape Girardeau crash. Why don't I pause there for a second and ask if anybody wants to raise their hand about Cape Girardeau? Kirk, you're muted.
Mr. Wood, it's great to talk to you. It's amazing.
All right, thanks.
I'm just wondering about Cape Girardeau, definitely predated Roswell. Why is it just not getting the attention? It never really has in UFO research.
Well, that's a great question. I've tried, and Paul Blake Smith has tried, and it's there has been a lot of attention. In the 2000 timeframe, it was the subject of a complete dedicated talk, which I gave in Orange County at the MUFON International Symposium. I had Charlotte Mann there. We played videotapes of her. I gave an hour and a half long lecture all about that particular case. So the data is out there, and there's my talk in the MUFON proceedings as well. I don't know if they videotaped it at the time or not. I think they probably were videotaping, but why isn't the mainstream media picked it up? And I think they probably would if David Grush had said, well, we had the 33 Magenta case. Well, and then there's the 41 Cape Girardeau case. And everybody's heard of Roswell. Roswell has the most evidence. So, yeah, why doesn't the media pay more attention is a fundamental question. Anybody else? Margie.
Yes, earlier you mentioned about obtaining information through the Freedom of Information Act, and I have submitted Oh, probably at least 8 requests, 4 cases where I had detailed evidence about time and location, and I've never gotten a response, ever.
Well, did you get an acknowledgement from,
Nope, nothing.
well, I would resubmit using a certified letter. Um, and then you typically get a real response. And until you have a case number back from them, you basically are nowhere. So I would do that again. The question is um, what organizations are you submitting to? Are you submitting to the National Archives? Are you submitting to the CIA, the Air Force, the Navy?
Air
Um,
Force, the National Archives, and also the FAA.
yeah, well, the FAA should probably respond pretty well. Uh, so I would just resubmit and send it certified, and you should get a better response.
Okay,
So anyway,
try
um,
again. Thank you.
yeah, uh, and so no other hands. I'll continue on. Um, so we talked about Cape Girardeau. Um, And then this is another book that my father wrote with Nick Redfern on alien viruses and MJ12. And so he talks about crashes, but also focuses a lot more on the biological aspects of alien viruses. Some of the majestic documents talk about, we extracted serums from uh, the bodies at Roswell that offer the potential of fantastic um, biological and virological and chemical weapons. This is mid 50s where they're all in on this stuff. So that was interesting. And this is an interesting book um, about crash UFOs and a lot of scientists that went sort of disappeared or got redirected. And so you got to check that on Amazon and read the summaries of it and see what if that's something interesting. And now I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about the quest for anti-gravity, which is sort of what I'm interested in, and the hot button of, I mean, the ultimate secret. What is the ultimate secret that the bad guys are trying to control? It is it's anti-gravity. It's gravity control. Is that we all know that UFOs don't fly or use kerosene. Um, they well, they use some sort of gravity control, gravity manipulation, some sort of force that gets created. And so there's lots of different theories and approaches as to what that could be and what happened there. And so I'll draw you back to the mid 50s with this particular article from the New York Herald. It says the conquest of gravity aim of top scientists, and these are people at the Convair division of General Dynamics Corporation that are working on gravity control. It looks like, to me from this picture, I see bearings, I see spinning magnets, I see, high-speed spinning magnets, maybe counter-rotating spinning magnets is the first technical clue that I see. There's also this very interesting article on gravity control as the key to G engines or gravity engines are coming. And in 1956, it says, the Glenn L. Martin Company, which becomes Martin Marietta, which becomes Lockheed Martin, or Lear Corporation, or Sperry Gyroscope, or the Gravity Research Foundation, which is started by Bob Bogart or something like that, Babson, all on gravity research. And Clark Electronics Lab. So these people are mentioned here. And, to go a little more conspiratorial for fun, the author here is this guy, Michael Gladwich. And he was good friends with Admiral Byrd, who did the expeditions to Antarctica and allegedly had interfaces and you know, UFO Nazi encounters, etc. But he wrote a whole book on Antarctica, which I found interesting. He was a World War II ace in Poland and then France and then in the UK, and very much plugged into all these aerospace corporations as sort of a war hero, super pilot, pilot instructor, veteran. So, and then the Glenn L. Martin Company started this think tank called the RIAS Group, Research Institute of Advanced Studies, in 1955, formed by George Bunker in Baltimore. And George Trimble was the head of their advanced propulsion effort. And he is the arch villain in the book, The Hunt for Zero Point by Nick Cook. But my impression is that these people pictured here are the people that solved and cracked gravity control somewhere in 58 to 62 timeframe. But all these people have tremendous Wikipedia entries and are impressive. You know, A-listers in theoretical physics and mathematics and so forth, just full-on geniuses. And we're working hard on gravity control. And to give you an example here of one gravity control craft, which I think is out there. This is a Project Blue Book record for March 23rd, 1966, where Eddie Laxon, a civilian, observed this craft and this man. What I saw was definitely not from space. The man was wearing fatigues and had a cap and a bill broken up like an Air Force mechanic square, Laxon said. So Eddie is driving to work, 10 years in the Air Force in Oklahoma, and rounds the bend and sees this craft. This is his sketch with numbers on the side. You know, this TL47168 written on the side, and a man kneeling outside this ladder with lights in this long teardrop shape with this huge electrostatic wick and so forth on it. And it's clearly not an ET craft. You know, it's a man-made one. This is an artist rendition done by Michael Schratt and his team of what happened. Eddie didn't really have a Mustang, in case you were knowing. It's just sort of stylized happiness. But anyway, this is an example is clearly a man-made craft in 1966. And there are other examples of earlier ones. And for those that are interested in a lot of technical details about UFOs and how they operate, I urge you to look at you know, Unconventional Flying Objects by Paul Hill, who's a NASA scientist. It's kind of an older book, but it's, you know, Edgar Mitchell writes commentary about it, and my father wrote the foreword to it. But it's clear that you know, there's something to do with magnetic fields, plasma glow, electrostatic fields. There's no hydrocarbons involved. You know, fusion could help. There's no aerodynamics used. So there's some clues, and that's really what I wanted to give you. You know, Michael Schratt has this book called Dark Files, which is on Amazon, where you can look at some of his credible, you know, man-made craft. He goes back to Snake River, Twin Falls, Idaho in '47, where this saucer type craft is screaming down at 1,000 miles an hour the Snake River Canyon with these plasma glow ejectors. They aren't, you know, rockets or anything like that. It's a very different technology, and many other cases. So ultimately, this is the black swan event for humanity. This is gravity control is the holy grail, as I mentioned earlier, that the government or the secret control group wants to thwart and protect and not allow to be discovered. So that's what's holding the world back, along with fusion or 0 point energy or some way to reduce the cost of electricity dramatically to improve the world in a dramatic, clear way. And, what's the problem with the world? Well, it's a lack of resources. I mean, you can't grow food anywhere. You can't have water out of the air. You can't suck carbon dioxide out of the air and clean up the environment. You can't filter the ocean. I mean, all these things can be done. It just takes energy and innovation and time and ingenuity of man. But this is, the criteria, in my opinion, that the ETs want us to solve before they'll show up and say, "Oh yeah, you're ready now. You've stopped all your wars. You got rid of your nukes, and you've progressed as a planet that you can now consider to be, um, um, join the team, the cosmic team." So, in my opinion, disclosure is not going to happen. There's sort of two types of disclosure. There's the ETs showing up and disclosing deliberately on their agenda, and then the government disclosing, or we dragging it out of the government as they kick and scream violently, as evidenced by the recent round of congressional hearings and the lack of transparency from the CIA or the government. So that's what we have to do, is to get it out from the witnesses and the archives and in the ground where it's still buried. There's probably lots of material still left in the ground. There's a whole bunch of reasons why that's true. So nothing is more important than physical evidence. Not hardware, biology, witness stories, whistleblowers. I mean, whistleblowers really help, but it's the hard evidence. I mean, give me a hieroglyphic hatch that we can prove is ET with weird materials. That's what would be impressive. So that's what has to happen, is that you really need hard physical evidence. And, all these things are important. These whistleblowers and accounts of abductions, all these things are important and worthy of research and documentation and effort and so forth. But in the end, in my opinion, it's not going to move the needle. And that secrecy is the problem. It is the enemy of democracy. It is what's unconstitutional, and it's against the Bill of Rights. And I believe they've murdered scores of people, starting with James Forrestal, the former Secretary of the Navy, and one of the original founders of MJ12, along with Vannevar Bush. Those are the two guys that led the charge for President Truman to get it signed and done. And it fundamentally hurts the global standard of living and so forth. And it reduces the focus on education and so forth. If you had, the crime is that you got 1,000, 5,000 secret cloistered scientists underground working on this problem of super advanced technology, and you're missing the 100 million, 500 million engineers and scientists all over the globe. They would love to work on this and could solve it much faster, and advance our society with biological breakthroughs, with technological breakthroughs, and that's the crime. That's what they should be indicted for in the world court. And who are they benefiting? I mean, I'm sure it's a breakaway civilization by now, or there's multiple people. As soon as you've got I believe if you can do this in 1966, that you could do it in your garage today. If you knew what to do, you could make something that could, a big garage, go to space. I mean, there's lots of technology that you would like to have, and you need to properly engineer it. I wouldn't, you might not succeed and you might die, but any sort of good organization would do that. And then, why should the government admit the truth? This is number 12 question in the AI ufologist, bringing that back, just to give you a sense of why the government should admit the truth and tell the truth. It would promote transparency and trust. We would trust our government more if they told the whole truth, nothing but the truth. But probably wouldn't. They would have to tell part truths, and they would reduce the fear and misinformation that's out there. Some people are fearful, others less so. It would validate all these eyewitness accounts and so forth. It would expand scientific investigation, which will allow for different products to be accomplished. But those would be highly upsetting to the global world order at the same time. And it could improve global cooperation. Let's work together on this problem in the way we try to do with CERN, for example, in physics. Although CERN is sort of a red herring and technically obsolete, in my opinion, because we already have gravity control. We already understand breakthroughs in physics, and going down the string theory path is just a distraction. It may be ultimately good science for some reason, but I think it was a cover story, possibly. And then you can confront and explain the cover up. Why did you cover up this for so long? Why didn't you tell the truth? Well, we were worried about the Russians. We were worried about all these other people. And so there was a logical reason why you might have wanted to keep it secret in the 40s, 50s, 60s. But at some point there was a crossover point where it made more sense. But they'll be held to pay no matter what whenever they disclose the truth. And there's a legal and ethical responsibility to do this. But do ETs have any ethics? It seems like humans might. There's this delicate line between law and ethics. Is there a bunch of classified law that trumps the ethical mandate? But we do have a constitution, last time I checked, and unethical orders issued by the president to murder somebody that a military officer considers are unethical and against the Constitution, he's not supposed to do, and he won't do, right, hopefully. So anyway, so those are some of the ideas of why the government should admit the truth, and to ease the cultural and societal impact. And maybe that's what we've been experiencing for the last 20, 30 years, is continual drip, drip, drip in movies and discussions and podcasts and leaks, et cetera, is to continually to ease the cultural and societal impact on humanity of the eventual reality that we are in essence the last humans, so to speak. But anyway, it could potentially restore public confidence as well. And then, ultimately you get to the point of, well, now what? What the hell should we do? I mean, I listened to you, Ryan, for this whole presentation, and I'm struggling. Well, what can I do? What should I do? And I don't have any, crystal answers. I leave it, turn it back to you, the audience and the listener, and let you think about what you can do and how you can do it, and why you should, try to make a difference. And you can think about, who is responsible, and does it really matter? I mean, should you crucify the guys that have been keeping it secret all along, or it just doesn't matter and you ought to, let's move forward rather than move backward. or do you want to try to find the technology and make money, which is what most business people want to do. It's, it's all about the technology and making money and so forth, and transforming the world through technology for the betterment of humanity. And that's, uplift humanity with fusion energy and gravity control or immortality tech. Uh, and so, my day job is I'm working on fusion because that's how I'm trying to make a difference, is by cracking the code to implement low cost, super low cost fusion, $1 to $5 a megawatt hour instead of the best typical efforts of fusion companies today across the world, which haven't demonstrated fusion yet, at $50 a megawatt hour, which is the same as nukes and hydrocarbons. Solar and wind are doing much better, but you really have to lower it much lower to make a difference in energy costs for everybody, and that enables a lot of different technologies. A gravity control would be tremendous. If you give me 1% gravity, I can spin a flywheel and create, endless electricity or power in a small box. Or you can bolt something on, even with all sorts of fancy controls, so people can't take it apart and put it in the bottom of your aircraft, and suddenly don't have to put as much fuel in, and you can lower the cost of travel. And then maybe even a more speculative thing is, it's pretty clear that ETs have figured out they have different biology. They have different lifespans. They likely have the secret to immortality technology in some way, shape, or form. And our scientists and engineers are working on the fact that our, aging is a disease that needs to be cured. It's not just something that happens all the time. So, take your vitamin D and your magnesium and start doing high intensity interval training a few times a week. That's your best bet to stave off, um, the reaper for as long as possible until the immortality tech comes along and we can start living a lot longer. So that's something you could do. The other thing is that you may very well plunge the world into an economic, religious, and political turmoil if you tell the truth. Or some of these breakthroughs in gravity and fusion and so forth, they're going to upset the apple cart. Fusion could upset the hydrocarbon world. Gravity control will upset the military world in a big way, but it also could provide tremendous opportunities to go to space where there's virtually unlimited resources, provided you can do it effectively and easily, and would help new technology evolve that could be beneficial to humanity. But there's certainly bound to be turmoil along the way, or just change along the way, and accelerating change. So these are the big questions that I leave you with, and the ultimate question of, now what? What the hell should I do? How should I try to make a difference? And I just urge everybody to look at your own skills, look at your own motivation, look at your own efforts, and where you want to contribute, and plug yourself in to try to make a difference somewhere along the path, in ufology or reverse engineering or wherever you can fit, and try to help us move from a backwater planet to somebody that might be able to join the cosmic kindergarten. Thanks for your time.
Does anybody have any questions? Just go ahead and raise your hand if you want to. I've got a question for you, Ryan.
Okay.
Since you've been involved in this for so long, have you ever been confronted by MIBs or any government agents that wanted you to stop doing what you're doing?
Well, that's a great question. And the answer is no. I've been, I never had anything weird, and nor has my father. That he's ever never told me about anything like that. Um, so I guess we're not really close enough to the secret or dangerous enough to get any visits. But I mean, fundamentally, it's all about hardware and evidence. If you've got pieces of crash saucer, I think people would be paying more attention. So anyway, but
Yeah.
no, nothing here. And please don't come. I don't want them either. So
Right. Exactly. Anybody else have a question?
looks like Kirk does.
Go ahead, Kirk.
You reference all the books and the authors. One of the contemporary books that I found fascinating was Imminent by Luis
Oh, yeah.
Elizondo. He throws out about everything touching, ufology and all the topics, and even starts going toward the anti-gravity route with how, a really fascinating theory on move. What is your take on him coming from the inside and the information he provides? How credible is it?
Well, I think he's telling the truth. I haven't read his book, but I've got it here to be scanned into UFODex, ufodex.com, and uh, I I find it great that he's willing to stand up and say, "Hey, I'm a first person. I was there. I did this. I was involved, and here's my perspective." There's very few people from the government that has done that. I think of Dan Sherman in his book Above Black, where he said he worked at the NSA, basically as being a psychic interface between aliens and the NSA. Um, and there's several other, firsthand sort of whistleblowers or people that have come forward, but there's not many.
Anyone else?
I had a question about this is Frank here about I guess the speech you could call it that Truman made about the military industrial complex. And Ryan, wonder what your thoughts are in the context of what you've learned in your UFO research. What's your take on that?
Well, I think it was Eisenhower, President Eisenhower, that made that comment about the military-industrial complex, and that's in my book, UFOs Who Knows: The Ideal Christmas Gift for People. It's on Amazon. I want to just read it to you. Eisenhower, page 161, and he certainly said the words and he meant the words, and his granddaughter's done a lot of work on that. President, this is in 1954. The only public comment he's ever made about UFOs. Well, in 1961, in his farewell address, he says, "With regard to the recent UFO reports, nothing has come to me at all, either verbally or in written form. A man who I'm trusted from the Air Force said that it was, as far as he knew, completely inaccurate to believe that they came from outside this planet or otherwise." So this is when he was in office. And then later in his farewell address in 1961, he says, "We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex," which, Frank, I guess that's the quote that you were referring to. "The potential for disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties. Only an alert and a knowledgeable citizenry can compel, with the proper meshing of huge industrial and military machinery of defense, with our peaceful and methods and goals, ... akin to and largely responsible for sweeping changes in our industrial military posture has been the technological revolution during recent decades, ... Quote continues. So this was a farewell presidential address in January 17th, 1961. I suspect you can Google that on the web and read the complete farewell address if you want.
Thank you.
This
Got a
is
question?
Megan.
Oh, go ahead.
This is Megan. I didn't figure out how to raise my hand. I have heard stories that President Eisenhower had secret meetings with some of the ETs, and they cut deals with the ETs. And if that is the case, that's probably another reason why the government does not want to come clean, because they would have to tell everybody what the deals that have been cut with the ETs on, they're doing experiments and research on us humans and all the animals, and
Right.
that's way too much. They don't they don't want to give that information out.
Yeah, no, I
Uh,
agree. I agree, Megan. That's a good point. And actually, there's lots of people that have done research on that particular evidence string associated with the secret agreement with the Eisenhower and the Greys, the reptilian, not the reptilians, the Greys. My understanding.
Has anybody found any documents
Well,
corroborating that?
There are several people that have written about this, and I would plug the question into UFODex, but I just got a document from a reporter that talks about that, but I can't really, I haven't replicated it or translated it or authenticated it or done anything, and it's not my place to really say anything about it. So I'm working on it. Maybe in the future here we'll have something more exciting to another bullet point to support the authenticity of an agreement with the ETs. So Debbie, I can see Debbie now.
Okay, we've got a question from the chat. An interview with Travis Walton, he disclosed he is not in favor of disclosure. He felt if we disclosed what we knew, that would let our enemies know what we know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, there's the question is, what do you disclose? Do you think anybody would have a problem with the government saying, yep, well, we've seen a lot of craft in our atmosphere, and yeah, there is some extraterrestrials. That's probably no big deal. The question is next, well, do you have any crashed hardware? Well, yeah, we do, but we can't really show it to you. Well, give us a year or two and maybe we'll show you some. Well, okay, we showed you some hardware in a couple of years, and people say, well, where are the bodies? Where are the alien bodies? Well, we have them, but no, you can't see them. And so it's this gradual titration of information. And if you just open the kimono and give them everything, it's a problem, as Travis Walton highlighted. Mel?
Okay, Mel?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I too cannot find out how to raise my hand here.
It's
I'm
at the bottom.
curious to get your thoughts as to the sightings that are going on most recently along the East Coast, New Jersey and such, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I haven't really followed that. My sort of expertise is in crashes and documents and gravity and things like that. But it's not just the East Coast. I think there was a lot of stuff in the UK and in Europe. And the UFOs tend to show up in the middle of war zones. I mean, they were in World War II, they were in Ukraine, they were in the Middle East. They were in Korea, they were in, so you know, are they ET or they are our ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, exotic tools? And I suspect they're not ours because we wouldn't want to disclose that we have these really cool, sophisticated orbs. And we want to save them for the right time, but maybe that's just a cover story. You know, nobody knows. Is it ours or theirs? And so I'm not
They're
sure.
in Missouri right now too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they're all over. Anybody else? Can we get Ryan's email address that he mentioned again for follow-ups? Question.
Well, you can go to magiceyesonly.com and put, you know, hit the contact button or the contact button on UFODEX or the contact button on majesticdocuments.com, and any of those places will send it. But you know, rwood at frontlineaerospace.com will send it to you. Send it to me. That's the address that I'm using for my ufological stuff. My other day job address I want to keep clean and pure with proper business contacts.
Okay. Can you show your book one more time?
Oh yeah, well there's UFOs, Who Knows?
Okay.
And there's the AI Ufologist, which is fun read, you know, and then Magic Eyes Only. This is the mothership, the 500 pages that gives you summaries of all the crashes in bite-sized chunks. You know, you can read 1 page or 10 pages and get a sense of what happened with that crash. And it's all ranked and rated and documented and referenced and footnoted and, you know, appendix. And I did my best to try to make it as legitimate as and thoughtful as possible.
Okay. They all sound great. I'm going to get all of them today. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. That was
Yeah,
great.
well, thanks for inviting me, and it was fun. Take care, everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. It was
Bye.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.